podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by thebatmanuniverse.net. Here, we love talking about everything Batman. The BatmanUniverse.net has news, original content, and reviews about Batman comics, movies, TV shows, video games, and more. Check out thebatmanuniverse.net and join our Discord server to start chatting with fellow fans. We can't wait to talk to you guys. Also, visit our Patreon page and join our other awesome supporters. But enough of this nonsense. On with the show.
Hey folks, it's Theo. Welcome to another TBU Specials. In this episode, I am going to be sitting down and talking to writer-artist Juni Ba. He and I met last week to talk about The Boy Wonder #1, the new DC Black Label miniseries that is due out on May the 7th at comic shops everywhere. And if you heard the news coming out of Comics Pro, this story focuses on Damian Wayne. So, you know, Damian being my favorite Robin, I was happy that Juni agreed to sit down and speak with me on what to expect, especially in his first issue and the series as a whole. So he's going to be handling the writing as well as the drawing duties. So really wanted to pick his brain as far as what readers can expect when the series comes out on May the 7th. So here it is, my conversation with Juni Ba on The Boy Wonder #1. I hope you enjoy. Hey folks, it's Theo here at the Batman Universe, and I am sitting here with Juni Ba, writer, artist on the upcoming Boy Wonder series over at DC. Juni, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. So you're over there in Paris living it up, and I'm here.
No, I'm in the south, actually, way from Paris.
Oh, you're in the south of France. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you're in the south of France, still a beautiful area. I was actually in London last year and thought of crossing the channel, but didn't get a chance to.
I recommend it.
Yeah,
it's really nice, especially it's gonna get really hot. So if you're sensitive to that, I would say don't do it in the summer. But I don't know, during the time when London is the worst is when the South is the best, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm in Louisiana, so heat is a natural thing for me. So it doesn't mean it doesn't mean much to me at all. So let's talk about Boy Wonder. So let me tell you my story. So I am, of everybody at the Batman Universe, I am the biggest Damian Wayne mark. So I am on social media. I'm getting all of the updates coming out of Comics Pro at their annual meeting. And then there's this story. DC announces Boy Wonder, focusing on Damian Wayne. And the first thing out of my mouth is, yes, I am there. So this isn't your first time dealing around with Damian. You had the 3-part arc in Truth and Justice with Andrew Aiden, that was focusing on his birthday. Is that where you became a fan of the character, or were you always a fan of Damian?
I guess I already was. Sorry, I have a cat.
So do I.
I've been reading stories of Damian here and there for the last 10 years. I don't remember exactly when his first story came out, but a story here and there. He's one of those characters that I had a fondness for. So yeah, I always knew he existed, and he was always. I don't know if it's okay to curse on this podcast, but I had a nickname for him, which was a very affectionate nickname. Sorry, but it also I called him the Little Ish, to not say the actual word. But yeah, I guess my affection came for this character pretty early on, just as a reader. And then the Truth and Justice story happened mostly because originally DC contacted me as like that was the very first email that I ever received from them asking me to work on something, and I did not want to work on the thing they were offering. Instead, I said, "Well, I've been writing this Damien story just for myself. Do you want to take a look?" And because I was interested in drawing Damien, the stars were already aligning because Andrew Aidin was looking for an artist for his Truth and Justice story, and like coincidence, but really fortuitous coincidence. So that was my trial run, I guess, the very first DC story I ever worked on.
Okay. If you give your pitch to DC and you say, "Hey, I'm writing this Damien story right now for myself," and they came back and said, "Well, no, we like the idea of the story, but you can't use Damien," who would you have used if any other Robins were available?
None of them. To be honest, the story works because it is Damien, not because it is Robin. It works because it's the story of a kid coming from a very specific type of familial background with a very specific list of like issues stemming from being raised by the kinds of people that he was raised by, and having those two families and comparing the values of both sides and trying to figure out why he doesn't really fit in either. So like it was a story that I wrote because I felt very close to that struggle that Damien found himself in. And yeah, like if I had found another idea that would fit, I don't know, Tim or Jason more, I probably would have gone with that. But I don't know, my brain just gravitated towards Damien.
It is definitely a coming of age story for him, and we've seen them before. But how is yours different from what readers may have seen before?
Well, first off, I guess there's always the way that I tell stories. So, my style and the style of the team that I gathered with Chris O'Halloran and Ed Chabidika. And more so than that, it's also sort of like I try to use what I call the Batman TAS approach of taking all the elements that you think work about the character and trying to synthesize them into something that's digestible and easily accessible for anyone, even especially those who have not ever opened a Batman book in their life, don't even know that there are multiple Robins or anything like that. And to try and really make something that's both fun and interesting for the people who already know that world and very accessible for the people who don't, and all gathered in a cohesive whole, like both in terms of aesthetic and tone. And like, because I have my own sensibilities, it really leans into the sort of fairy tale world, the more larger than life and very allegorical type of fable style of storytelling. So yeah, it really works more in that sense of like this is sort of a synthesis of everything that at least I find interesting in that world and those types of characters. And I try to make something that's digestible by anyone.
You mentioned the animated series. Your art in the preview so far seems to have a lot of the animated series vibe to it. Were you a fan of it back in the day?
Still is. Or rather, like it's this thing of I always say that I'm not really a fan of anything. I appreciate the work of the people behind it. So especially growing older, the older I get, the more I say it's not so much that I love Batman, it's that I love the work of Dini, Bruce Timm, Murakami, and Dwayne McDuffie and all those people who are working on it. And Darwin Cook and all those guys. And yeah, so that's also why it's such a big influence on the stuff that I do. Like to this day, I still look to Darwin Cook and Bruce Timm to like, how do you simplify a shape? How do you make a body look a certain way and everything? And plus, there's a bit of fun as well of like, I think the closest that I have in terms of designs is the Nightwing design that I made, which is very Bruce Timm inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it's very funny, like looking at some reactions and seeing that some people really gravitate towards the fact that it reminds them of that stuff.
Yeah,
Type of stuff. It's nice.
Mullet and everything.
I almost gave him a mullet. I didn't do it because I think like it didn't fit. Like it didn't fit the time or the aesthetic that I wanted him to have, but I almost did it.
Yeah, I think fans, and again, I'm not gonna spoil this first issue, but I think I think fans will be very pleased with how much Dick has matured in
Yeah.
this story. Now, the story focuses on Damian's relationships with his brothers, Tim, Dick, Jason. Without spoiling the series, how involved will Batman be in the story? Will Pops make multiple appearances, or is the first issue pretty much it?
Well, he is, again, without spoiling, for most of the book, the way he appears in the first issue is what you get for most of the book.
Gotcha.
That type of appearance is what I mean, because, well, Batman is very like I didn't have any qualms giving him a small role because Batman is this really ubiquitous presence in pop culture anyway. He's not suffering from any shortage of stuff, is what I'm saying. So I felt comfortable giving a story where instead of focusing on the father-son relationship, I could focus on the relationship of the kids, meaning the same way that in real life you would look at a group of a group of siblings and you could tell what kind of influence the parents had on each and every one of them. At least the first three issues are very much about looking at how every one of those kids was affected by this looming presence of the dad. He's not even physically present, but you can tell that they try to act in such a way that he would have agreed with it. They try to follow the tenets of the rules that he gave them growing up. And you get this shadowy Batman figure in some panels of like, even when he's not physically present, he's still here, and you can feel his impact on the kids who then have a lot more room to show you what they got from the upbringing that he gave them. And later on in the book, he starts having a bit more of a presence, like a physical one.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna mention this. So there were some of the images. Oh, it has such a pretty kitty. But there were some images, again, when the previews came out of the story where it showed Damian doing Damian stuff. And
Yeah.
there was an uproar about it. Now, first of all, again, I read the first issue. And again, I want to thank the folks at DC for allowing me to see a preview issue. So I understand the context.
Mm-hmm.
How can you assure fans that what they see out there right now isn't what they're going to get in this story?
It's hard to answer exactly without spoiling anything, because a lot of the book relies on Damien's prejudices about a lot of things.
Gotcha.
And the book is really told from his perspective. And the same way that you start the book with things looking a certain way because Damien feels about them that way, later on you get more of Damien growing from learning things. The big crust of it for me was, as a kid, you're born in a family and you don't know anything. You don't know these people. You have a lot of ideas, especially if you've been told things by other members of the family. And then you get older and you start learning new things. And it gives you a lot more context and a lot more nuance into everyone. And this is kind of what it is like. Damien is someone who is very annoying. He has a lot of very set ideas about everything. And then every story he gets to change the way that he views the person that he just interacted with.
Gotcha.
And a lot of the interest in the story comes from that. Like, I think the first story is a good example of it as well. Like, he starts with a certain idea about Nightwing, and by the end, he's starting to sort of look at things from a different point of view, I guess.
So will each issue focus on a particular brother and then perhaps a team up at the end, or is it kind of mixed up along the way?
That's kind of the idea. I think I gave the information already in another interview, so like the cat is out of the bag already. But the idea was, first issue is Nightwing, second is Red Hood, third naturally is going to be Red Robin, and then fourth is going to be with Talia, and the fifth is the conclusion of everything. And as you go along, like I said, every team up allows him more perspective, more nuance, and you get to discover as well like the other members of his environment. Like, he's a door into discovering that world as well.
Okay. Well, I would be remiss because we have a resident Stephanie Brown fan at the Batman universe. And so when he sees this story with Damian, there are all the other Robins, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, where's Stephanie? But you kind of said it before. This isn't a Robin story. This is a Damian story more than anything else.
Yeah. And it's not that I kept certain characters out because I didn't care or didn't like them or anything. Well, mostly I focused on the ones that I really know very well, that I knew I could fit into the story because they brought something to it. But the way I write stories is very much with this idea of it should work even if you take away the Batman stuff. If I take away all that stuff that like fans are into and that has been used for decades, is the story still worth something? If you replace it with completely new original characters, does it still work to someone? And I think it does. Like I already shared it with a bunch of people that I know in my personal life who don't read comics, don't even know anything about it. And it actually got them interested in getting the rest and even like starting their own Wikipedia research about these characters because the book got them interested into knowing more. So yeah, I had to pick and choose who felt the most relevant to the story I was doing. And unfortunately, some of them had to get the axe.
Gotcha. So, as a cartoonist, someone who does writing as well as the art in your stories, we know a lot of times the script influences the art. Are there ever times where you'll get a panel or you'll get a page done and you think about it and you say, well, maybe I need to fine tune this script a little bit and send it back for proofing and editing again?
Oh yeah, all the time. I try not to do it, especially here, because like usually I make my own books entirely myself. So if I want to wake up at 3 a.m. and change a panel or a line or whatever, I can do it. But here I have a team, and out of respect for their time, I'm not gonna like change things all the time. So once the art is finished, it is finished. I send it to the colorist, he does his job, and then we send it to the letterer and he does his job, and I try to not change anything once someone else has impacted it.
Gotcha.
Because I don't want to be that kind of annoying team member.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my next question, and you kind of started mentioning it already. This isn't your first time in doing writing and artwork on your own. You know, you got Mobilist, you got Monkey Meat that you've been doing. You have all these stories out there. Do you take, and you kind of already started by saying, you know, what you do with regards to handling a corporate IP compared to creator-owned stuff. You know, I'll get up 3 o'clock in the morning and I'll work on stuff, and it's because it's mine. I do what I want to do, but you can't really do it when you're working on a Batman story or a Damian story.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess the main difference was there's a lot of baggage with those characters again already. And there's a lot of, I think I didn't receive many notes on the series as I was making it. But there were two that stuck to me. The first one was when I was writing issue 2, because he gave me a note that was basically, this is usually how those two characters are supposed to interact. And I think you should skew closer to that. At least that's what the editor told me. And it made the story even better. Like the dynamic that I was writing actually turned out to be even more interesting and complex because of that note. So in the end, it worked out pretty well. But yeah, sometimes you have a certain idea of where to take things and you have to reel it back because there's sort of not a mandate exactly, but like you do have the corporation above your head being like, you can't do this with that character. You're not allowed to do that. You can't skew too far away from how we usually make them. And it can be frustrating sometimes, but I think in this one, it came out pretty well.
Great. So I did have one other question, actually two. Does the fact that you're doing this under Black Label allow you to take a little bit more freedom than if it was under the regular DC imprint?
Oh, yeah. Yes. It's funny, actually, because like Chris Conroy, the editor, when we started working on it, when I even pitched it, actually, he asked me like how he could justify that book being part of Black Label, and I told him, well, it's not supposed to be like a really gritty, dark, super violent or bloody type of story or anything. So it doesn't conform to the generally accepted idea of the books for adults because it's not really like I skew a little more all ages in terms of I want to make sure that someone, say 15 and up, can read that book. But it's also a book where I want to be able to go as complex and as dark in the themes as I want it to go. And Black Label is a great place for that because I don't have to worry about a continuity. I don't have to worry about not censorship exactly, but in certain imprints, they're going to tell you this is for this type of audience. We don't want to bother them too much or scare them too much or whatever. So yeah, I think the argument I used was if you've read Monkey Meat, you know that I can do interesting stories with some depth to it. And you already published Darwin Cook, and this is kind of the same vibe of what I'm trying to do here. So the Black Label already has books of the vibe that I'm trying to make.
Gotcha. And so we got colors that are by Chris O'Halloran, and we getting letters from Aditya, and I'm sorry to butcher this name, but I'm gonna try my best. But it's Bedika. How has that relationship been?
Great. The thing is, I've already worked with them before, and we have like a friendly relationship with Aditya. So I think I can't even remember if he asked to be on the book or I asked him. Like, but basically, like it's kind of like working with friends, kind of, and also learning how they function, tossing ideas and seeing what they do with the stuff that you started. Oh, sorry. And like one of the great pleasures of my year so far has been receiving the pages after they worked on them. I just really like it cannot be overstated how fun it is to start something and give it to someone else and see them take your idea into a different direction than what you wanted it to be and come up with something better than what you would have done. Like I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I could see that conversation. Yeah, Juni, I hear you doing a Damian story. You do know I'm coloring it, right?
Well, yeah, the colorist, I asked him, like I asked Chris myself. Aditya, I think we were on a call together, like we have Zoom calls sometimes.
Okay.
And I think I was actually telling him what the story would be, and he was like, "Can I do it?"
When you have friends in the business, it makes it easy.
Oh yeah, yeah, I really like that. Like it makes for a very easy way to work with other people because you know what their sensibilities are, you know how to communicate with them over time. Like you learn all that stuff because you've already done stuff together, and then there's a familiarity that builds over time. And in this case especially, it's very convenient being able to like know sort of that the other person is going to understand what you mean when you describe something in a script, for example. And then they take that and they make something even better than you wanted it.
So this is going to be my last question. And again, you don't have to sell me on this. I'm anything Damian Wayne, I'm hooked. But for the person sitting on the fence right now, how would you sell Boy Wonder to them?
I guess it's kind of the same. I have the same argument for everyone, I guess, which is I made this as a comic, not as a Batman or a Robin comic. I made this as a comic and I tried to make a comic as good as I could make it. And I do think it's pretty good. I do think like it would be a fun and interesting and heartfelt kind of story. And the longer you go, the more complex and a bit darker it gets. And yeah, so my main argument, I guess, is that irregardless of whether or not you've ever read a Robin book in your life, this is something that I think could be interesting to you just as a fun comic book series to follow, as a fun TPB to get when the whole thing has been collected. Yeah, like most of my work I think it's a pretty good story that stands on its own, and it has some familiar things for the people who already know that world, and it is very accessible for the ones who don't. And just as a good fairy tale type of story, I think it's really nice.
Well, I am excited. Again, I want to thank the folks at DC for allowing me to see some of the preview pages of Boy Wonder #1. But again, it is the Boy Wonder #1, written and drawn by Juni Ba. It is on shelves May 7th. So FOC is April the 14th. So make sure you get your orders in so that you can take part of it. I'm definitely going to be getting mine. I am a huge Damian Wayne mark. Everyone who knows me knows, when he first made his appearance back in Batman, I hated him. And when he got killed in Batman Incorporated, I was happy. And then when he came back, he became my favorite Robin. So, Juni Ba, thank you so much for putting this story together. I am excited to see where it goes. Thank you for joining me here at the Batman universe.
Yeah, thank you. That was nice. Sorry for my voice cracking all the time.
That's okay. Life happens. I just got over a bad allergy attack where it was just I was sleeping sitting up. So I definitely know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Oh my God. Anyway.
So again, I want to thank Juni for taking the time to sit with me to talk about the Boy Wonder #1. Really appreciate it, especially considering that he was just getting back from being under the weather and being sick. So I really appreciate that. Again, the Boy Wonder #1 releases on May the 7th. FOC is coming up on April the 14th. So if you haven't ordered your copy yet, please make sure you do so. I am very stoked for this miniseries, being the big Damian Wayne fan that I am. But that is going to do it for this episode of TBU Specials. I, as always, want to thank you all for listening in and to thank you all for your continued support of the Batman universe. As always, you can find and follow the Batman universe on all social media platforms, including X, Facebook. We're also on Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. So you can find us all there. You can also check us out on our Discord server. Come and join us and take part in the conversation that's always going on there. We also have a Patreon page that helps support all the things that we do on TBU. It helps keeps the site free. I really appreciate those who are already patrons and invite anyone else who are interested to join our Patreon page and take part of some of the special things that we have out there for our patrons. But again, I want to thank you all again. Really appreciate everything that you do for the site. And until next time, be safe on the streets of Gotham.